I must say this. Good job, Pixar. Good job. They managed to sell us exactly the same story twice. And the best thing that could be said is that it actually worked the second time. I was genuinely surprised by how much I enjoyed the sequel of Inside Out. I am not a big fan of Pixar making sequels, to be honest, but they never make any sequels if they don't have a coherent story to tell, with only one exception being Cars 2. But that's understandable since the original Cars is the most commercial Pixar movie and wasn't exactly great. Recently I watched the first Inside Out again after almost 9 years since I saw the first film back in 2015. And I have to admit I was blown by how good this film was. What's the first Inside Out about? To put it shortly, it's the story of accepting change. Joy realizes that Riley needs all emotions including sadness. Joy, almost like an egomaniac, wanted to have absolute control over Riley, believing that happiness and cheerfulness are the only things that Riley needs in her life. However, throughout this story, Joy, just like Riley, grows up, matures and comes to realize that a person needs all the emotions. It can't always be joy. Joy is very important, of course, because life has no meaning without happiness. But sadness is very important too, for it is needed to reflect upon problems and losses. Sadness allows you to let your grief out, which makes you feel better. Everyone needs that. Joy learns this lesson. The first Inside Out perfectly portrays the difficulties of getting older, moving from the place where you spent your entire childhood and letting things go. Speaking of the second film, it really is the same lesson, but two characters learn this time instead of one. As Riley turns 13 and his puberty, new emotions arrive, and one of these emotions is anxiety. Anxiety wants to control Riley, which Joy doesn't approve of. Eventually, anxiety decides to get rid of joy and other four basic emotions altogether, because she thinks she knows better what Riley needs. Moreover, anxiety decides that Riley going into high school needs a completely new personality and tries to overhaul almost everything, erasing a previous version of Riley's personality altogether and replacing it with a new personality. Just like Joy in the first movie, anxiety believes that she knows better and doesn't need anybody's advice at all. In the first film, as Joy and Sadness are both out of the headquarters, Riley is left only with her anger, disgust, and fear, which leads her to almost failing her hockey tryout, and then almost running away from her parents. In the second movie, Riley is left with anxiety, envy, embarrassment, and ennui, and she almost loses her middle school friends and almost fails the important hockey game, which could determine her future in the local high school hockey team. In the first movie, Joy and Sadness were trying to get back to the headquarters, going through different places inside Riley's mind. In the second movie, exactly the same happens, but this time all 5 basic emotions are trying to return back. They even go through imaginary land again, but there is a Mount Rushmore with all Riley's crushes instead of French fries forest. In the end, anxiety completely loses control, but joy returns just in time. Both anxiety and joy come to understand that one emotion should not be in control of a person. That person's mind can and should be very complicated, and the whole personality cannot be based on one particular trait of a person. Personality is defined by the whole diverse kaleidoscope of emotions and memories. And all memories are very important, both positive and negative. And we shouldn't be ashamed of bad experiences we had, because those experiences shape us. We aren't inherently bad or inherently good. We are very messed up. So as we see, Inside Out 2 structurally is almost the same as Inside Out. But to be fair, this is probably the only story you can tell in this setting. All Inside Out films are sentenced to be small-scale personal stories. And this is their big advantage. They are able to connect with viewers on so many personal levels. Being so relatable is what makes this movie so good. Change can be painful, and most people go through painful changes, one way or another. Moving to another city, graduating from school, college, or changing a job. I don't think we're gonna see Inside Out 3. I heard the idea of making the third movie about Riley graduating high school and leaving her family for college, leaving her previous life completely behind. Honestly, this does sound like a good premise for a movie. The only problem is that Pixar would have to add one more emotion. Lust. Don't think it's gonna happen in a family-friendly movie. Unless Pixar ignores anything remotely sexual altogether, which would be too weird to be honest. But seeing how well Inside Out 2 is performing at the box office, another Inside Out movie is probably closer than I think. A lot of people ask why adults in Inside Out only have 5 basic emotions, while Riley's getting more as she grows up. The only plausible answer that could be applied here is that mentally healthy adults usually stabilize their emotions, while teenagers are very confused. That could be the answer, but in the sequel we see that adults also have anxiety. The actual answer is that Pixar never planned to make an Inside Out 2 movie in the first place. Where were anxieties of Riley's parents in the dinner scene in the first movie? Anyway, Inside Out 2 is a very good movie. At first I wasn't really sure how exactly I felt about it. On one hand, it made me feel very emotional again. On the other hand, it's almost an exact copy of the first film, but with more emotions and older Riley. But after all, the most important thing is that Inside Out 2 is a really good film. I like that the ending is intentionally left ambiguous. We don't know whether Riley was selected by the Firehawks or not. She just smiles and then the movie ends. It's a perfect ending, in my opinion. The most unrealistic thing about this film is the portrayal of California in June. There should have been a lot of pride flags since June is Pride Month. Okay, I'm certainly not giving any spoilers about my next video.